As you're watching this video, Oregon is on fire like it has never been on fire before. Not in 2020, not in 2024, ever. In just a few weeks, wildfires have torched an area larger than the state of Delaware, and fire season still has 2 months left to run. By the time this video ends, somewhere in Oregon, another acre will have burned. Let's break down exactly how bad it's gotten, fire by fire, number by number. Long start with the headline number because it's staggering. As of the first week of August 2026, Oregon has already broken its all-time record for total acres burned in a single wildfire season, and the season isn't even close to over. The previous record was set just 2 years ago in 2024, when roughly 1.9 to 2.08 million acres burned across the entire state over the full fire season, from May through the end of October. In 2026, Oregon blew past that mark by early August, with more than 2 million acres already scorched statewide, according to Northwest Coordination Center data. That means Oregon needed less than 3 months in 2026 to do what took nearly 6 months in 2024. To put that in perspective, that's more than 3,100 square miles, an area bigger than the entire state of Rhode Island twice over. And remember, fire season in Oregon typically doesn't wind down until the first sustained rains arrive in late September or October. There are still roughly 2 months of high fire risk ahead. And when you line up the recent years side by side, the whiplash becomes obvious. In 2021, Oregon recorded 1,661 total fires and 827,596 acres burned, along with 1 death. In 2022, there were 1,975 fires, but a smaller footprint of 436,772 acres. 2023 was comparatively quiet, with 1,731 fires and somewhere between 160,000 and 260,000 acres burned. Then came 2024, the previous record season, with 2,039 fires and about 1.92 million acres burned. 2025 pulled back again, with 338,551 acres burned and 205 structures destroyed, and now 2026 has blown past all of it, already over 2 million acres by early August, with dozens of large fires still actively burning and no containment date in sight for several of them. That volatility itself is one of the most important things to understand about modern Oregon wildfire seasons. They're becoming less predictable and, in the worst years, dramatically more destructive. As of the most recent reporting in the first week of August 2026, Oregon has roughly 48 active wildfires burning simultaneously, covering somewhere between 1.6 and 2 million acres, depending on which day's containment report you look at. Because these fires are still growing and shrinking in real time, officials have counted around 60 large fires this season under the Northwest Coordination Center's definition, meaning blazes that burn at least 100 acres in timber or 300 acres in grass and rangeland, or that require a dedicated incident management team. Suppression costs are climbing right alongside the acreage. Through late July 2026, Oregon's firefighting bill had already hit roughly $90.9 million. Compare that to about $76.3 million spent by the same point in the 2024 record season. That's an increase of more than $34 million in suppression costs alone, and that number only grows the longer these fires stay active. Fire officials have been blunt about why. It isn't that crews are fighting fires differently. It's that Oregon has a much higher number of simultaneous significant fires burning at once, which means stretching multiple incident management teams and firefighting resources across the entire state at the same time. One Oregon Department of Forestry official summed it up during a recent briefing. This season feels reminiscent of 2024's record year, except by their own admission. At this exact point in the calendar, 2024 hadn't even reached this level of intensity. In other words, 2026 got worse, faster. If you want to understand the scale of this season, look at one single fire, the Roe Creek Complex, burning about 10 miles south of Fossil, Oregon, in Central Oregon. This is currently the largest wildfire in the state, and its growth curve alone tells the story of the entire season. It ignited on July 15, 2026, sparked by lightning. On August 1st, it stood at 313,439 acres and was 57% contained. By August 2nd, containment had actually dipped slightly to 55% as fire behavior intensified. By August 3rd, crews had pushed containment back up to 60%. By August 6th, the fire had grown to 344,834 acres with containment at 64%. And by August 7th, it had reached 357,895 acres with containment climbing to 73%. That's growth of roughly 45,000 acres in less than a week, while containment was simultaneously rising, which tells you just how enormous the active fire line still is, even as crews make progress. At its peak staffing, the Roe Creek complex has had more than 2,300 personnel assigned, along with 73 fire crews, 22 dozers, 179 engines, and 11 aircraft. The complex itself is made up of multiple individual fires burning together, including the Crosswhite Fire, which alone has burned nearly 296,000 acres, plus the Camel Hump Fire and smaller incidents. The fire has forced multiple red flag warnings, including a rare, particularly dangerous situation designation, a category the National Weather Service reserves for the most extreme, life-threatening fire weather conditions involving high winds, low humidity, and explosive fire growth potential. Roe Creek isn't burning alone. Here's the rest of Oregon's fire map as of the first week of August 2026. The Hay Creek complex has burned approximately 200,292 acres and is 98% contained, showing just how much personnel and air support can accomplish once a fire is finally cornered. The Akawa Butte Fire has burned about 27,491 acres and is 99% contained, essentially wrapped up. The Coyote Fire has burned roughly 17,448 acres and sits at 89% containment. The Henry Fire has burned nearly 29,889 acres and is 97% contained. The Grasshopper Fire is burning near Mount Hood National Forest, threatening one of Oregon's most visited outdoor recreation areas. And the Bench Fire is burning in and around Warm Springs, Oregon, causing significant disruption to the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs community. Add those together with Roe Creek Complex, and you're looking at well over 600,000 acres from just 6 named fire complexes, and that's before counting the dozens of smaller fires spread across the rest of the state. Zoom out and you'll see this isn't an isolated Oregon problem, it's a Pacific Northwest crisis. Just across the border in eastern Washington, wildfires in Spokane and Stevens counties have forced thousands of residents to evacuate and destroyed hundreds of structures. Washington Governor Bob Ferguson declared a statewide emergency in response. As of early August, Washington was tracking 17 active wildfires covering roughly 262,000 acres. Combine Oregon's more than 2 million acres with Washington's 262,000, and the Pacific Northwest fire footprint for 2026 alone is pushing toward 2.3 million acres burned, in a region that historically was never considered as fire-prone as California. That's changing fast. So why is this happening? The pattern behind these numbers isn't random. Several factors are compounding every fire season in Oregon. First, reduced snowpack. Climate change is driving earlier and lighter snowmelt across Oregon's mountain ranges, meaning the landscape dries out earlier in the year and stays dry longer, extending the effective fire season on both ends. Second, a century of fuel buildup. After more than 100 years of aggressive fire suppression policy across the western United States, forests and rangelands are now loaded with dense, dry vegetation that acts as fuel once a fire does start. Third, lightning ignition during peak season. Most large fires during the July through September window, including Roe Creek Complex, are sparked by lightning strikes hitting already tinder-dry landscapes rather than human activity. And fourth, extreme wind events, particularly dangerous situation, red flag warnings, combining high wind, low humidity, and heat, have repeatedly supercharged fire growth overnight, turning contained fire lines into active threats again within hours. Behind every acreage number is a real cost. In the 2025 season alone, Oregon lost 205 structures to wildfire. The 2024 record season, while devastating in scale, recorded 1 confirmed death, but tens of thousands of residents were placed under evacuation orders at various points, from the Durkee Fire in eastern Oregon, which alone burned close to 294,000 acres, to fires threatening entire communities. In 2026, with suppression costs already exceeding $90 million by late July and climbing, and with fires actively threatening towns like Warm Springs, Fossil, and communities near Mount Hood, the economic and human toll of this season is still being tallied in real time. Air quality has also swung wildly across the fire zones. Officials have reported air quality readings ranging from good to hazardous within the same week in areas near the Roe Creek complex, a reminder that wildfire impact extends far beyond the flames themselves into respiratory health for entire regions. Here's the number that should worry every Oregonian watching this video. Fire season historically doesn't end until the first sustained rains arrive, typically in late September. That means of today, there are still roughly 6 to 8 weeks of active fire risk ahead, and 2026 has already surpassed the previous all-time record with 2 months still to go. If growth rates from July and early August continue even at a reduced pace, Oregon could end this season not just as a record breaker, but as a season that redefines what worst case looks like for the state. Firefighters are still holding the line. Containment percentages on fires like Hay Creek, Akawa Butte, and Henry show real progress is possible even in a historically bad year. It just requires an extraordinary amount of personnel, equipment, and money on a scale Oregon has never had to sustain before. So that's where Oregon stands right now. Over 2 million acres burned, a state record broken with 2 months of fire season still left. Nearly $91 million spent fighting fires so far, and dozens of active blazes from central Oregon to the slopes of Mount Hood. This is a story that is still being written day by day, and I'll be tracking every update as the season continues. If this breakdown helped you understand the scale of what's happening, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next update, because unfortunately, with 2 months of fire season left, there's a very good chance the numbers in this video will already be out of date by the time September rolls around.